I want you to listen to me very carefully right now, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to completely transform everything you thought you knew about wealth, about success, about your purpose on this earth. For the next 3 days, if you will do exactly what I'm going to show you, something inside your mind will shift. Something that has been locked will open. Something that has been asleep will awaken. And I'm not talking about some magical thinking or positive affirmations that make you feel good for 5 minutes and then disappear. I'm talking about a fundamental reprogramming of how you see yourself, how you see God, and how you understand the kingdom that you were born to rule in. You see, most people live their entire lives never understanding that they were created for wealth. Not just financial abundance, though that's part of it, but wealth in every dimension of your existence. Wealth in your relationships, wealth in your health, wealth in your impact, wealth in your spirit. But somewhere along the way we got confused. We started believing that poverty is holy. We started thinking that struggling is spiritual. We began to accept lack as if it was God's will for our lives. And I'm here to tell you today, that is a lie from the pit of hell. God never intended for his children to beg. He never designed you to scrape by, barely making it, wondering how you're going to pay your bills at the end of the month. When God created Adam, he didn't put him in a desert. He didn't put him in a wasteland. He placed him in a garden of abundance, a garden where everything he needed was already provided. And then God said something powerful. He said, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it." That word subdue means to dominate, to rule, to have mastery over. God was giving humanity a mandate to wealth, to dominion, to success. But we've lost that understanding, and because we've lost it, we've been living beneath our privileges as kingdom citizens. Now I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, "But Dr. Munroe, I've tried everything. I've worked hard. I've prayed. I've believed. And I'm still stuck in the same place." And I understand that frustration. I really do. But what I'm about to show you is not another thing to try. This is about discovering something that's already inside you. Something that's been there all along. And when you discover it, when you activate it through what I'm going to teach you in these next 3 days, everything changes. Everything. Now I want to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest with yourself. How many of you came here today feeling like you're living at 50%? Maybe 30%? You wake up, you go through the motions, you do what's expected, but deep down there's this gnawing feeling that says there's got to be more than this. I've met people who have everything the world says should make them happy. The career, the family, the house, the car, but they're empty inside. They're successful, but they're not fulfilled. And that's because they've been living someone else's script. You see, the greatest tragedy in life is not death. The greatest tragedy is life without purpose. It's waking up every day and not knowing why you're here. It's having gifts that never get unwrapped. It's having songs that never get sung. It's having inventions that die in the graveyard of your mind. And I'm here to tell you today, that's not God's plan for you. God didn't create you to be average. He didn't create you to blend in. He didn't create you to spend your entire life trying to be like somebody else. He created you to stand out. He created you to be original. He created you to manifest something that only you can bring to this earth. But here's what happens. From the time we're children, the world starts shaping us. Your parents had expectations. Your teachers had expectations. Your culture had expectations. And slowly, without even realizing it, you started becoming what they wanted you to be, instead of what you were born to be. I remember a young man who came to one of our conferences, 28 years old, successful banker, making good money. But he was miserable. And when I sat down with him, he told me something that broke my heart. He said, "Dr. Munroe, I became a banker because that's what my father wanted. But every night I go home and I play my guitar and I write songs and I feel alive. But I can't tell anyone because they'll think I'm crazy for wanting to leave a secure job." I looked at that young man and I said, "Son, you're already crazy. You're crazy for living someone else's dream. The graveyard is not waiting for your music. The graveyard is waiting for your silence." And that's what most people give it, a lifetime of silence, punctuated by excuses. You see, there's something I need you to understand about purpose. Purpose is not a luxury. It's not something you get to after you've made enough money, after the kids are grown, after you retire, after life settles down. Purpose is the reason you were manufactured. And a product that never fulfills its purpose is, by definition, a failure. No matter how much it costs, no matter how beautiful it looks on the shelf. I remember walking through a museum once, and I saw this incredible grand piano, absolutely stunning. Ornate carvings, gold leaf, immaculate condition, and it was roped off behind velvet barriers. I asked the curator about it, and he said, "Oh, that piano is over 200 years old. It's priceless. We keep it perfectly preserved." And I said, "When was the last time someone played it?" He looked at me confused.
Lady.
"Sir, no one plays it. It's far too valuable." And right there I saw the tragedy. A piano that never makes music is just expensive wood. It doesn't matter how well it's preserved. It doesn't matter how many people come to look at it. If it never fulfills the purpose for which it was created, it has failed at being a piano. That's what happens to human beings when we prioritize preservation over purpose. We preserve our reputation. We preserve our comfort. We preserve our security. And in doing so, we silence the music we were created to make. Now somebody's getting uncomfortable right now because I'm stepping on your favorite excuse. You're thinking, "But Dr. Munroe, you don't understand my situation. I have responsibilities. I have bills. I have people depending on me." And to that I say, absolutely. I'm not telling you to be irresponsible. I'm telling you to be fully responsible. To yourself, to your Creator, and to the world that needs what's inside you. Because here's what happens when you keep ignoring that voice inside. You don't just lose your dream, you lose yourself. You become a shell of the person you were meant to be. You walk through life numb, going through motions, checking boxes, but there's no fire, no passion, no purpose. And the tragedy is this: the people who depend on you, they're not getting the best version of you. They're getting the exhausted, frustrated, resentful version of you. The version that's quietly dying inside while pretending everything is fine. Your children don't need a parent who's financially stable but emotionally bankrupt. They need a parent who's alive, who shows them what it means to honor the gifts God placed inside you, who teaches them through example that you don't betray yourself for comfort. Your spouse doesn't need a partner who brings home a paycheck but leaves their soul at the office. They fell in love with the person who had dreams, who had vision, who had that spark in their eyes when they talked about what could be. Let me tell you something about provision. When you align with your purpose, provision follows. Not always immediately, not always the way you expect, but it follows. Because when you're operating in your design, you tap into a supernatural economy that doesn't make sense to people who live only by logic and fear. I've seen it happen thousands of times. The person who finally quits that soul-crushing job and starts that business, and within months, they're making more than they ever did. The artist who stops doing commercial work they hate and creates from their heart, and suddenly the right opportunities appear. The teacher who leaves the restrictive system and starts their own school and finds resources they never imagined. But here's the key. You have to move first. You have to take the step before you see the full staircase. Faith isn't believing when you see everything clearly. Faith is taking action when you only see the next step. And I know what you're thinking, but what if I fail? What if I try and it doesn't work? Let me ask you this. What if you succeed? What if you try and discover that you're more capable than you ever imagined? What if the life you're afraid to reach for is actually easier than the life you're struggling to maintain? You see, I've discovered something profound in my years of studying human potential. The path of least resistance isn't staying where you are. That's actually the hardest road you could choose. Because when you're not growing, you're dying. When you're not expanding, you're shrinking. There's no such thing as standing still in life. Think about a tree for a moment. A tree doesn't wake up one morning and decide, "You know what? I think I'll stop growing now. I've reached a comfortable height." No, that tree either continues reaching toward the sun or it begins to decay. It's the same with you. You're either becoming more of who you were created to be, or you're slowly becoming less. And here's what breaks my heart. So many people are living beneath their privileges. They're sitting on gold mines while begging for pennies. You were born with treasure inside you, but you've convinced yourself you're poor. You have a symphony in your soul, but you're afraid to make a sound because someone might criticize your song. Let me tell you what fear really is. Fear is the dark room where negatives are developed. It takes the beautiful film of your potential and turns it into pictures of disaster. But courage? Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. Courage means you're terrified, but you move forward anyway. I remember working with a young woman years ago who had a gift for teaching. Everyone could see it except her. She was stuck in a job that drained her spirit, but she was afraid to step out. What if I fail? She kept asking. And I told her the same thing I'm telling you right now. You're already failing. You're failing the version of yourself that's trapped inside, screaming to get out. 6 months after she made the leap, she told me something I'll never forget. She said, "Dr. Munroe, I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of succeeding. Because if I succeeded, I'd have no more excuses. I'd have to live at a higher level permanently." That's it right there. That's the real fear. You know what happened when I finally understood this? I stopped running. I stopped making excuses. I stopped blaming my parents, my country, my circumstances. I looked in the mirror and said, the problem isn't out there. The problem is in here. See, fear disguises itself brilliantly. It wears the mask of practicality. It speaks in the voice of reason. Oh! That's it. It says, be realistic. Don't get your hopes up. Who do you think you are? And we mistake that voice for wisdom when it's really just terror dressed in bitterness. I've watched this play out 1,000 times. A young person comes to me with fire in their eyes and a dream in their heart. They want to build something, create something, change something. And I can see the greatness in them. It's right there, burning bright. But then I see them 6 months later, and the fire's gone. They've taken a safe job. They've settled for reasonable goals. They've accepted what everyone told them was realistic. And when I ask what happened, they give me all the logical reasons. The economy, their responsibilities, their age, their education. But if you listen carefully, beneath every logical reason is the same whisper. What if I'm not enough? Here's what breaks my heart. God didn't give you that dream to torture you. He gave it to you because He already placed everything you need to accomplish it inside you. The vision is the evidence of provision. If you can see it, you can be it. If you can conceive it, you can achieve it. But we don't believe that. We think God is playing games with us. We think He's dangling dreams in front of us just to watch us fail. That's not God. That's your fear talking. That's your doubt projecting itself onto the divine. God is not nervous about your future. God is not pacing back and forth in heaven wondering if you're going to make it. He's not biting His nails, anxious about whether His plan for you will work out. That's a human projection. We transfer our anxiety onto God and then pray to a deity who reflects our own insecurity back to us. Listen to me carefully. The God who spoke worlds into existence is not intimidated by your circumstances. The God who numbers every hair on your head is not confused about your next step. The God who knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb has not suddenly lost track of His blueprint for your life. When you pray and feel that resistance, that heaviness, that sense of divine disapproval, ask yourself, is this truly the voice of the Almighty, or is this the echo of every authority figure who ever told me I wasn't enough? Is this God speaking, or is this my father's disappointment, my mother's worry, my teacher's limitation, my culture's narrow vision? I've watched people torture themselves for years, trying to earn approval from a God who already approved of them. They fast, they weep, they beg, they bargain, all while God is saying, I finished that conversation before the foundation of the world. You are accepted, you are loved, you are equipped. Now rise and walk in it. The truth is, most of us are not afraid that God will reject our dreams. We're afraid that God will accept them. We're afraid He'll say yes, and then we'll actually have to become the person capable of carrying that vision. We'll have to grow. We'll have to change. We'll have to leave familiar territory and venture into the unknown. So we create a God in our image, a God who is as limited, as fearful, as risk-averse as we are, a God who validates our smallness, a God who gives us permission to stay exactly where we are. And then we call that wisdom. We call that humility. We call that faith. But it's none of those things. It's fear wearing a religious mask. I want you to see something clearly today. Real faith, the kind that changes nations, transforms lives, builds legacies, doesn't whisper, it doesn't tiptoe, it doesn't ask for permission from your circumstances. Real faith is the most aggressive force in the universe. And I know that word makes some of you uncomfortable. Aggressive, you're thinking. Brother Myles, faith is supposed to be gentle, quiet, humble. No, you're confusing faith with passivity. See, faith is violence against impossibility. Faith is an assault on the status quo. Faith looks at what is and says, that's not good enough. Faith takes territory. Faith doesn't wait, it invades. Listen to how the scripture puts it. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. That's not poetry. That's a manual. You want to know why most people never see their dreams materialize? Because they treat their vision like a wish. They treat their calling like a suggestion. They pray politely. They hope quietly. They wait patiently. And meanwhile, time is eating their purpose alive. I'm telling you, the moment you got that dream, that vision, that burning in your chest that won't let you sleep at night, that moment you became responsible for taking ground. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when the conditions are perfect. Now, because here's what happens when you wait. Doubt moves in, fear sets up camp, procrastination builds a house. And before you know it, you're 65 years old, sitting in a chair looking back at a life full of I was going to, and I almost did. That's not just sad, that's criminal. You had a seed in your hand that could have fed a generation, but you buried it. Not in the ground where it could grow. You buried it in your fear, in your excuses, in your I'm not qualified yet. And the world went hungry because of it. That's the part they don't tell you in church. They tell you God is patient, and He is. But your purpose has an expiration date. Let me tell you something that might shock you. You know what your greatest enemy is. It's not the devil. It's not lack of resources. It's not your past mistakes. Your greatest enemy is comfort. Comfort is purpose's assassin. It creeps in quietly, wearing a smile. It says, you've worked hard. You deserve a break. There's always tomorrow. And before you know it, tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. And next year becomes never. I've watched it happen to brilliant people. People with God-given talent sitting in their living rooms, binge-watching series, scrolling through other people's success stories, eating snacks, and convincing themselves they're just taking a season to rest. Rest? You haven't even started yet. You know what happens in nature when something stops growing? It starts dying. There is no neutral. You're either expanding or expiring. You're either building or decaying. You're either moving toward your purpose or moving away from it. And here's what kills me. People treat their purpose like a hobby, like something they'll get to when they feel like it. When the mood strikes, when inspiration hits. Let me tell you about inspiration. Inspiration is not a prerequisite for action. It's a result of it. You don't wait to feel inspired. You move and inspiration meets you on the road. The graveyard isn't full of people who lack talent. It's full of people who lacked urgency. People who said someday, until someday never came. God doesn't need your perfection. He needs your participation. He doesn't need you to have it all figured out. He needs you to take the next step with what you already know. You're waiting for a sign. This is your sign. You're waiting for permission. Consider yourself released. You're waiting for confidence. Confidence comes after obedience, not before it. Stop negotiating with your destiny. Stop making deals with yourself. I'll start when I lose weight. I'll start when I get more education. I'll start when the economy improves. The economy of heaven doesn't depend on earth's economy. Your purpose isn't seasonal. It's urgent. It's now. And every day you postpone it, you're not just robbing yourself. You're robbing the world of what it needs from you. You see, the world doesn't need another copy. It doesn't need another imitation. It doesn't need you trying to be someone else. The world is already full of people trying to be other people. What the world is starving for is the original version of you. And here's what breaks my heart. So many people die without ever showing up. They spent their whole lives rehearsing, preparing, getting ready, but they never actually stepped onto the stage. They were so busy watching other people perform that they forgot they had their own performance to give. I want to tell you something that might sting a little, but it's truth. Your potential is not impressed by your intentions. Your destiny doesn't care about what you meant to do. The world will not remember what you almost became. History is not written by people who tried. It's written by people who did. And before you say, "But Dr. Munroe, I don't have what it takes," stop right there. That's a lie. That's the enemy of your purpose speaking. Because here's what I know. If the purpose is in you, then everything you need to fulfill it is already in you or around you. You don't need everything, you just need to start with what you have. Moses didn't have a degree in public speaking, he had a stutter. David didn't have military training, he had a slingshot and 5 stones. Esther didn't have political experience, she had courage in a crisis. What made them great wasn't what they had, it was that they used what they had. Right now you have something in your hand. You have a gift, a skill, an idea, a passion, a connection, an experience. Stop waiting for more. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission. The permission you're waiting for must come from you. I'm telling you today you are enough. Not because you're perfect, not because you have it all figured out, but because the purpose inside you is enough. And when you align with your purpose, you tap into a power greater than yourself. You tap into the reason you were created. This is your moment. Not tomorrow, not next year, not when things settle down. Now, today, this hour, you have been positioned for such a time as this. Your preparation was not random. Your pain was not purposeless. Every disappointment you faced, every door that closed in your face, every betrayal that broke your heart, none of it was wasted. It was all preparation for the assignment you're about to step into. You see, God doesn't waste anything. He's too economical for that. He uses everything. The Bible says in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. Notice it doesn't say all things are good. It says all things work together for good. There's a difference. That means your mistakes are not disqualifications. They're qualifications. Your failures are not your finale. They're your foundation. Your wilderness was not punishment. It was preparation. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he could deliver a nation from bondage. David spent years running from Saul before he could rule as king. Joseph sat in prison before he could sit on a throne. Jesus spent 30 years in obscurity before 3 years of ministry. And you've been in process, being refined, being purified, being prepared. The question is not whether you're qualified. The question is whether you're willing. Because God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. I'm telling you today, you are qualified not because you're perfect, but because not because you have it all together, but because you've been chosen. Not because you're without weakness, but because His strength is made perfect in your weakness. And here's what I need you to understand. The very thing that makes you feel inadequate is often the very thing that makes you effective. Your brokenness qualifies you to heal others. Your past failures position you to encourage those who are failing. Your present struggle gives you credibility with those who are struggling. God uses cracked vessels. He uses broken instruments. Why? Because broken people don't boast in themselves. They boast in Him. Wounded healers are the most effective healers because they understand pain. They have compassion. They have empathy. They know what it's like to be down, to be out, to be desperate. So stop disqualifying yourself because of your past. Stop eliminating yourself because of your present limitations. Stop counting yourself out because you don't feel ready. You are ready. Not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful. Not because you're mighty, but because you're available. And availability is more important to God than ability. This is your moment. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Not when you feel more prepared. Now. Today. This very hour. Because here's what I've discovered. The graveyard doesn't care about your potential. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't give extensions. It doesn't say, well, you had good intentions, so we'll give you another decade. No. The graveyard is the most unforgiving landlord you'll ever encounter. It evicts without notice. It forecloses without warning. And when you arrive there, and you will arrive there, we all will, the only thing that matters is what you delivered, not what you dreamed. Let me be brutally honest with you right now. I'm not interested in your excuses anymore. I'm not moved by your explanations about why you haven't started. I don't care that your family didn't support you. I don't care that you didn't have the right education. I don't care that the economy was difficult, or the timing wasn't perfect, or the stars weren't aligned. You know why? Because somewhere in a rural village with no electricity, someone is writing a book by candlelight that will change educational systems. In a garage right now, someone with less resources than you is building something that will employ thousands. In a small apartment, a single mother is creating art that will inspire millions. Not someday, but today. The difference between you and them isn't talent. It isn't opportunity. It's decision. They decided that their purpose was more important than their comfort. They decided that their assignment was more urgent than their fear. They decided that leaving a legacy was more valuable than living in luxury. And that decision changes everything. I want you to think about something with me. What if, just what if, your greatest idea, the one you keep postponing, is the exact solution someone is praying for right now? What if that business you're afraid to start would create the job that saves a family from poverty? What if that book you haven't written contains the one sentence that would prevent someone from giving up on their life? What if your delay is their deprivation? You see, your purpose isn't just about you. It's about all the people connected to your assignment. When you die with your gifts unused, you're not just robbing yourself, you're robbing generations. You're withholding medicine from the sick, withholding wisdom from the confused, withholding hope from the desperate. Your fear of failure is someone else's forfeited miracle. So the question becomes, what if you're wrong about yourself? What if the very thing you think disqualifies you is actually what uniquely qualifies you? What if your background isn't a barrier? It's your biography. What if your struggle isn't your shame? It's your story. I've watched people transform the moment they stopped seeing their life as a mistake and started seeing it as a message. That single mother who thought her journey was just pain, she started a support network that's now in 17 cities. That man who battled addiction and believed his past made him worthless, he now runs a recovery program that's saving lives every single week. That young woman who grew up in poverty and thought she had nothing to offer, she's teaching financial literacy to her entire community, breaking generational cycles of lack. See, your test is preparing you for your testimony. Your mess is becoming your message, but you've got to be willing to use it. You've got to be willing to turn your pain into power, your wounds into wisdom, your tragedy into triumph. And I know what you're thinking, but I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I need more training. I need to be further along. Listen to me carefully. Preparation is important, but it can also become procrastination dressed in wisdom's clothing. There's a difference between being unprepared and feeling unprepared. Most people who changed the world felt unprepared when they started. Moses had a speech impediment. David was a teenager with a slingshot. Esther was an orphan. Mary was an unwed teenager in a culture that could have stoned her. God doesn't call the qualifying, He qualifies the called. And you've been called. That restlessness you feel, that's a call. That dissatisfaction with mediocrity, that's a call. That dream that won't leave you alone, that's a call. And the world is waiting for you to answer. But here's what you need to understand. Your gift isn't just for you to feel fulfilled, though you will. Your gift isn't just to make you successful, though it might. Your gift is an assignment from heaven to serve earth. It's a divine download meant to upload transformation into someone else's life. When you hoard it, you're not being humble, you're being disobedient. You see, there's a word we've lost in modern culture. The word is asterisk. Asterisk. Stewardship. Asterisk. Asterisk. We think ownership, but God thinks stewardship. You don't own your voice, you're stewarding it. You don't own your ability to teach, to heal, to create, to organize. You're managing it on behalf of the one who gave it to you. And every steward will give an account. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to liberate you. Because when you understand you're a steward, you stop asking, what will I get out of this? And you start asking, who needs what I have? You shift from a consumer mindset to a contributor mindset. And that shift changes everything. Let me tell you something about purpose. Sajid. It's always connected to people asterisk. Your gift isn't just about you feeling fulfilled, though you will feel fulfilled when you use it. Your gift is about the person who's waiting for what only you can give. There's someone right now sitting in darkness who needs the light you carry. There's someone stuck who needs the key you possess. There's someone dying of thirst who needs the well that's inside you. And you're worried about what people will think. You're concerned about whether you're qualified enough. Listen to me carefully. Asterisk. Your gift is your qualification. Asterisk. The fact that God placed it inside you is your resume. The anointing doesn't come because you're perfect. It comes because you're willing. It comes because you said yes. I've watched people with doctorates sit in the audience, while people with passion stood on the platform. I've seen the credentialed remain silent, while the called changed nations. Education is valuable. Don't misunderstand me, but your gift doesn't wait for a degree. It waits for obedience. It waits for you to open your mouth, extend your hand, take the step. Think about the widow with 2 mites. Jesus said she gave more than everyone else. Why? Because she gave what she had. She didn't wait until she had wealth. She didn't disqualify herself because her offering seemed small. She released what was in her hand, and heaven recorded it as greatness. Asterisk. Your small is somebody much. Asterisk. Song you think is simple might be the anthem that saves a marriage. The word of encouragement you think is ordinary might be the lifeline that stops a suicide. The meal you cook, the smile you give, the time you invest. These aren't minor things, they're miracle seeds. You see, most people die with their miracles still inside them because they were waiting for the spectacular when God was asking for the simple. They were waiting for the $1 million platform when God had already given them a kitchen table. They were waiting to address thousands when God had already placed one person in front of them who desperately needed what was inside them. I've watched this tragedy play out countless times. People with extraordinary gifts sitting idle because the opportunity didn't look impressive enough. People with healing in their hands refusing to touch because the wound seemed too small. People with words of life refusing to speak because the audience seemed too insignificant. But let me tell you what heaven sees differently than earth sees. Heaven doesn't measure impact by numbers. It measures impact by obedience. Heaven doesn't calculate significance by visibility. It calculates significance by faithfulness. When you do what God has called you to do with what you have, where you are for whoever is there, that's when you step into the realm of the miraculous. Think about it this way. When Jesus fed the 5,000, he didn't create bread out of nothing. He's the creator of the universe, but he chose to work with what a young boy brought. 5 loaves, 2 fish. Nothing impressive, nothing that looked like enough. But in the hands of purpose, it became more than sufficient. That's the pattern of divine multiplication. God is not looking for people who have everything. He's looking for people who will bring what they have. Your little becomes God's much when you release it with faith. Your insufficient becomes His abundance when you offer it with obedience. And here's what most people miss. That young boy could have eaten his own lunch and gone home. He could have said, "What's my little lunch going to do for this massive crowd?" He could have held on to it out of fear or embarrassment. But he didn't. He brought what he had, and it fed thousands with baskets left over. Your willingness to bring your little is what positions you for the miraculous. Your courage to offer what seems insignificant is what opens the door to divine multiplication. Stop despising small beginnings. Stop dismissing humble opportunities. God is looking for your availability, not your ability. He's scanning the earth not for the most talented, but for the most willing. The boy gave what he had. He didn't wait until he had more. He didn't promise to bring something better tomorrow. He released what was in his hand today. And this is where most of you are stuck. You're waiting for more education, waiting for more money, waiting for more connections, waiting for the perfect timing. But heaven is waiting for your obedience, not your perfection. Heaven is waiting for you to move with what you have, not with what you wish you had. I've watched people waste decades waiting for ideal conditions that never come. Meanwhile, someone with half their resources and twice their faith walks into their destiny. The difference: one was waiting to be ready, the other was ready to be used. You see, God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. When He puts a dream in your heart, He's not asking if you have everything you need to accomplish it. He already knows you don't. That's the whole point. If you could do it by yourself, you wouldn't need Him. If you had all the resources, there'd be no room for miracle. The miracle is hidden in the inadequacy. The breakthrough is concealed in the insufficiency. That's why God chooses the foolish things to confound the wise. That's why He selects the weak things to shame the strong. Because when you succeed with less than enough, everyone knows it wasn't you, it was God. Think about David facing Goliath, a boy with a slingshot against a trained warrior in full armor. The odds were laughable. The equipment was mismatched. But David understood something that his brothers didn't. He wasn't trusting in his weapon, he was trusting in his God. The stone was just the point of contact. The faith was the true weapon. Your 5 loaves are just the point of contact. Your 2 fish are simply the connection point between your obedience and God's multiplication. Don't worship the provision. Don't obsess over the method. Focus on the one who multiplies. And here's what happens when you finally release what's in your hand. You make room to receive what's in God's hand. As long as you're clutching your inadequacy, as long as you're hoarding your little bit out of fear, your hands are too full to receive the abundance heaven wants to pour into your life. That's why Jesus didn't just multiply the bread. He distributed it. The miracle happened in circulation, not in storage. The moment those disciples started giving it away, that's when multiplication kicked into overdrive. It flowed through their obedience. Every time they handed out a piece, there was more in the basket. Every single time. You know what that tells me? That provision doesn't come through preservation. It comes through participation in God's purpose. When you stop hoarding and start distributing what God gave you, your gifts, your time, your resources, your influence, you step into the flow of divine multiplication. You become a channel, not a container. And channels never run dry because they're connected to the source. Think about this. Those disciples could have stopped halfway through the crowd. They could have looked at that massive multitude and said, "You know what? Let's be conservative. Let's ration this carefully. Let's make sure we save some for ourselves first." But they didn't. They kept giving. They trusted the process. And the result? 12 basketfuls left over, 1 for each disciple who doubted. God gave them back more than they started with. That's how kingdom economy works. It defies human logic. It contradicts every principle of scarcity you've been taught. The world says hold tight, but heaven says release. The world says protect yourself, but God says pour yourself out. And every single time you obey that heavenly instruction, you discover that you cannot outgive God. You simply cannot. I want you to catch this. The leftovers weren't random. 12 baskets, 12 disciples. God was making a statement. He was saying, see, when you trust me with the little, I'll return to you the much. When you give away what you think you need, I'll give back what you didn't even know was possible. So right now, wherever you are, I need you to examine what you're clutching. What are you holding back from God? Because you're afraid there won't be enough. What gift are you burying? Because you think it's too small to matter. What dream have you shelved because the resources seem inadequate? Today is the day you stop hoarding and start releasing. Because here's what I've discovered through years of watching people step into their purpose. The moment you release what you have, God releases what He has. The moment you stop clutching your small, the infinite responds with His much. This is the principle of kingdom economics. It doesn't make sense to the natural mind. Wall Street cannot calculate it. Your accountant cannot forecast it. Because multiplication in the kingdom doesn't follow the laws of addition and subtraction. It follows the law of faith-activated release. Let me show you something powerful. When that boy handed over his lunch, He didn't ask Jesus, "What's my return on investment? What percentage do I get back? Can I get a written guarantee?" No. He simply released it. And in that release, he triggered a supernatural return that fed thousands and still had 12 baskets left over. You see, many of us are waiting for God to multiply what we're holding, but God is waiting for us to release what we're holding so he can multiply it. The miracle is not in the holding. The miracle is in the releasing. The blessing is not in the clutching. The blessing is in the opening of your hands. And I need you to understand this today. Your seed is sitting in your hand right now. That thing you think is too small, that gift you've been minimizing, that idea you've been dismissing, that resource you've been hoarding, it's not small, it's a seed. And the value of a seed is never determined by its size. It's determined by what happens when it's planted. You're not called to display your seed. You're called to plant it. You're not called to admire your lunch. You're called to release it into the hands of the Master. And when you do, when you finally let go of what you've been protecting, you position yourself for a miracle that will impact not just you, but generations beyond you. Stop waiting for more before you start. Stop waiting to feel ready before you obey. Stop waiting for perfect conditions before you release. Because faith doesn't wait for perfect. Faith acts in the present with what's present. The widow didn't wait until her oil jar was full. She didn't wait until she had a business plan. She didn't wait until she understood the economics of supernatural multiplication. She started pouring while the miracle was still happening. She released while she was receiving. And here's what you need to understand about the relationship between faith and action. Faith isn't passive waiting. Faith is active participation. Faith doesn't sit on the sidelines watching what God will do. Faith steps onto the field and becomes part of what God is doing. I've watched too many people treat their potential like a museum piece, something beautiful to protect, something valuable to preserve, something precious to keep behind glass. They're so afraid of damaging it, so worried about wasting it, so concerned about misusing it, that they never actually use it at all. But potential was never meant to be preserved. It was meant to be spent, invested, released, deployed into the world where it can make a difference, solve a problem, meet a need, create value. You say you're protecting your gift, but protection without purpose is just another word for burial. The servant who buried his talent thought he was being careful. He thought he was being responsible. He thought he was protecting what his master had given him. But the master called it wicked. Why? Because unused potential is unfulfilled stewardship. Listen to me carefully. Your gift doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people who need it. Your talent wasn't given for your benefit alone. It was given for the benefit of your generation. And every day you keep it locked away, you're not just robbing yourself, you're robbing everyone who was supposed to be blessed by what you carry. I'm not talking about reckless abandon. I'm talking about strategic release. The farmer doesn't throw his seed randomly into the wind. He plants it strategically in prepared soil. But he does plant it. He does release it. He does let it go, trusting that what he buries today will multiply tomorrow. That's the faith principle at work. You have to be willing to lose what you see to gain what you don't see. You have to be willing to spend your seed to harvest your crop. You have to be willing to invest your now for your not yet. And here's the test of whether you really believe in your assignment. Are you willing to risk being wrong? Because if you're only willing to move when you're guaranteed to be right, you'll never move at all. Faith always involves risk. Vision always involves vulnerability. Purpose always involves the possibility of failure. But here's what I learned, and what I want you to understand. The greatest tragedy is not attempting and failing. The greatest tragedy is succeeding at something that doesn't matter. You can climb the ladder with perfect precision, rung by rung, never missing a step, never losing your grip, and then reach the top only to discover the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. That's not failure. That's something worse. That's wasted potential. That's a life invested in the wrong portfolio. I've watched people accumulate everything the world says they should want, only to sit in their accumulated abundance and wonder why they feel so empty. Because they were chasing assignment instead of accepting it. They were building their own kingdom instead of fulfilling their divine mandate. Your assignment doesn't negotiate. It doesn't adapt to your comfort zone. It doesn't wait until you feel qualified. It stands there immovable, waiting for you to rise to its requirements. And here's the beautiful tension. You're already equipped for what you're called to do, but you won't discover that equipment until you step into the arena. The discovery happens in the doing. The confirmation comes in. Think about Moses standing before the Red Sea. He didn't know he could part waters. He didn't have water parting on his resume. He didn't attend a leadership conference on advanced aquatic management. He had a staff, a God, and an assignment. And in the moment of need, everything he required showed up. That's how assignment works. It doesn't give you everything up front. It gives you everything in time. It releases resources in rhythm with your obedience. You take one step, and the next stone appears. You speak one word, and the next sentence forms. You open one door, and the hallway lights up. But you have to move first. You have to speak first. You have to reach first. I'm not talking about presumption. I'm talking about faith in motion. I'm talking about trusting that the God who planted the assignment also prepared the provision. Not always before, but always in time. Not always visible, but always available. And here's what I've discovered through decades of walking this path. Provision has a way of appearing asterisk, right at the intersection of obedience and need asterisk. Not a moment too soon, not a moment too late, but always precisely when your faith is stretched just enough to recognize the source. I've seen it happen too many times to call it coincidence. The phone call that comes the day the rent is due. The partnership offer that arrives exactly when you're about to give up. The idea that suddenly crystallizes after months of confusion. The door that opens just as another one slams shut. This isn't luck, my friend. This is the faithfulness of a God who watches over his word to perform it. But here's the challenge most people face. They want the provision asterisk before asterisk. They take the step. They want to see the whole staircase before they commit to climbing. They want the complete blueprint before they lay the first brick. And that's not how kingdom living works. That's not how purpose operates. God doesn't give you the provision so you can obey. He gives you the provision asterisk as asterisk you obey. Think about it like this. Onto the sea. You're standing at the edge of a river, and God says, cross over to the other side. You look at the water and say, but Lord, I don't see a bridge. I don't have a boat. I can't even see the other shore clearly. And God says, put your foot in the water. Because he's not trying to prove anything to spectators. He's developing trust in participants. The priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant didn't see the Jordan River part until their feet touched the water. The walls of Jericho didn't fall until asterisk. After asterisk, they marched around them for 7 days. The widow's oil didn't multiply until asterisk after asterisk. She started pouring. The pattern is consistent. Obedience precedes provision. Action precedes abundance. Trust precedes testimony. This is why so many people die with their potential intact. They're waiting for conditions to be perfect before they move. They're waiting for fear to disappear before they step. They're waiting for clarity to be complete before they commit. And while they're waiting, time is passing. Opportunities are expiring. And the assignment is calling out to someone else who's willing to move with incomplete information. God gave you an assignment before he gave you perfection. Think about that. Your assignment was issued in eternity, but your perfection is being worked out in time. That means the assignment doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It doesn't wait for you to get all your degrees. It doesn't wait for you to have all your finances in order. David didn't wait until he had palace experience to face Goliath. He showed up with shepherd skills and a slingshot. But you know what he had? He had confrontation with bears and lions in private. He had proven God in secret. And when the public moment came, he didn't say, let me go back to shepherd school for 4 more years. He said, I'll go. Moses didn't wait until he was eloquent to answer the call. God called him with a stutter. And Moses said, but Lord, I can't speak. And God essentially said, I know, I made your mouth. Now go, and I'll teach you what to say. God wasn't looking for ability. He was looking for availability. You see, the enemy's greatest weapon against your assignment isn't opposition. It's delay. He doesn't have to stop you. He just has to stall you. Because if he can keep you in the preparation phase forever, you'll never enter the manifestation phase. You'll die with books inside you. You'll die with businesses inside you. You'll die with inventions inside you. You'll die with sermons inside you. And here's what breaks my heart. Most people die at the edge of their purpose. They get right to the border of their breakthrough and they camp there. They get comfortable with almost. They get familiar with proximity to destiny but never possession of destiny. They become eternal students, never graduates. Eternal rehearsers, never performers. Let me tell you something that might shake you. There is such a thing as the sin of over-preparation. Yes, I said it. You can actually sin by staying in the preparation phase when God has released you into the action phase. Because at that point your preparation has become procrastination dressed in humility. It's rebellion wearing the mask of wisdom. Now let me give you a sobering truth that most people never consider. Every day you delay is not just a day lost. It's a day that impacts someone else's destiny. Because the thing inside you is not just for you. Your gift, your calling, your assignment. It's connected to other people's breakthrough. There are people waiting on the other side of your obedience. There are solutions locked inside your potential that somebody desperately needs right now. Think about it this way. What if Moses had said, I need another 40 years in the wilderness before I'm ready? An entire generation would have remained in bondage. What if Esther had said, I'm not prepared for this moment? Her people would have been annihilated. What if David had said, let me wait until I'm older and more experienced before I face Goliath? Israel would have remained in fear and oppression. Your delay is not happening in a vacuum. It creates a ripple effect. There's a young person who needs to hear your story to find courage for theirs. There's a business that needs your innovation to solve their problem. There's a community that needs your leadership to find direction. There's a family that needs your breakthrough to inspire their faith. And here's what breaks my heart. While you're sitting on your gift, making excuses, perfecting your plan, someone else is suffering without the solution you carry. Someone is dying without the hope you possess. Someone is lost without the guidance you could provide. Your procrastination has a price tag, and unfortunately someone else is paying it. God didn't give you your gift as a decoration. He gave it as a distribution. It's meant to flow through you to others, and every day it stays locked up inside you is a day someone goes without what they need. That's not a guilt trip, that's reality. Your assignment is bigger than your comfort zone. Your calling is more important than your fear. So I want to ask you directly, who is waiting on the other side of your obedience? Who needs you to step up? Who is connected to your movement? Your obedience creates a domino effect. When you step into what God has called you to do, you set in motion a chain reaction that touches lives you'll never even see. You become a generational transformer. Think about this. Every person who ever made a significant contribution to humanity had to obey a call that made no sense at the time. They had to move when it was inconvenient. They had to speak when it was unpopular. They had to build when others were tearing down. And here's what's remarkable. Most of them never saw the full impact of their obedience. Moses died before Israel entered the Promised Land. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about a mountaintop he would never physically reach. Countless teachers have poured into students whose future achievements they'll never witness. Parents invest in children whose grandchildren they'll never meet. But the investment still matters. Your obedience still counts. Because legacy isn't about what you see, it's about what you set in motion. I want you to understand something profound. Your life is not your own. You didn't create yourself. You didn't choose your talents. You didn't design your fingerprints or determine your potential. You are a stewarded gift, entrusted with resources, relationships, and revelation that are meant to flow through you, not stop with you. When you hoard what God gave you to distribute, you create a blockage in the divine supply chain. You become a dam instead of a river. And when you dam up your gifts, you don't just deprive others, you stagnate yourself. Water that doesn't flow becomes toxic. Gifts that aren't used become burdens. But when you obey, when you release what's in your hand, when you step forward even when you're afraid, you become a conduit of blessing. You become part of something infinitely larger than yourself. So let me ask you again with even greater urgency. Who's on the other side of your fear? Who's waiting for your courage? What breakthrough is delayed because you're still negotiating with God about the terms of your obedience? You weren't designed for safety. You were designed for significance. And significance always requires sacrifice. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not comfortable, not entertained, not distracted, but alive. Fully present, fully engaged, fully you. I'll tell you when that was. It was when you were doing something that mattered, something that stretched you, something that required the best of you. You felt alive because you were giving expression to the original intent for your life. Most people never feel that. They spend their entire lives waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel qualified, waiting for the perfect moment. And while they're waiting, life is passing them by. Their dreams are aging. Their gifts are rusting. Their purpose is waiting. But here's what I've learned. You don't get ready, then start. You start, then get ready. Action creates clarity. Movement creates momentum. The doing reveals the how. Think about it. Every skill you have, you learn by doing it poorly first. You didn't learn to walk by studying biomechanics. You learned by falling down, over and over again, until one day you didn't fall anymore. The competence came through the commitment, not before it. Your purpose works the same way. You discover it by doing it. You clarify it by attempting it. You refine it by living it. There is no substitute for engagement. There is no shortcut around action. I've watched so many people pray for direction while sitting still. They want God to show them the entire roadmap before they take the first step. But that's not how divine guidance works. God doesn't give you a roadmap. He gives you a compass. He says, start moving in this direction, and I'll guide you as you go. Remember the children of Israel in the wilderness? The cloud moved, and they moved. The cloud stopped, and they stopped. But notice they had to pack up their tents and start walking before they knew where the next stop would be. The guidance came through the obedience, not before it. That's faith, not certainty, not comfort, but confidence in the character of the one who called you. You move because you trust him, not because you see everything clearly. And here's the beautiful part. Every step you take in faith, every risk you embrace for purpose, every sacrifice you make for significance, it's building something inside you that nothing else can build. Character, capacity, credibility. These aren't just words. These are the pillars that hold up the architecture of true influence. When you have character, people trust your heart. When you have capacity, people trust your ability. When you have credibility, people trust your track record. And when all three come together, that's when you become unstoppable. Let me tell you something about the marketplace today. The world is hungry, starving, actually, for authentic leadership. They're tired of the fake. They're exhausted by the posturing. They can smell inauthenticity a mile away. Social media has made everyone a brand, but very few have substance. Everyone's got a platform, but not everyone has a message worth hearing. You know what separates the influencers from the trends? Depth. The influencer touches the surface. The transformer changes the foundation. And you can't change foundations with shallow roots. You need depth of character. You need years of development that nobody sees. You need the private victories that prepare you for public platforms. I've watched leaders rise fast and fall faster. You know why? They built their house on sand. They prioritized exposure over preparation. They wanted the spotlight before they developed the substance. And when the storms came, and the storms always come, they had nothing to anchor to. But the ones who last, the ones whose legacy outlives them, they understood something profound. Your private life determines your public impact. What you do when nobody's watching creates what you become when everybody's looking. The disciplines you practice in secret become the strengths you display in public. Think about an iceberg. You see maybe 10% above the water. That's the public you. But it's that 90% below the surface. The hidden development, the character formation, the daily disciplines, The integrity when it costs you something. That's what keeps you from capsizing when the waves hit. And here's what I need you to hear. You cannot microwave maturity. You cannot skip the process and expect to sustain the product. Some things must be slow cooked. Some things require seasons. Time is not your enemy in development. It's your refiner. It's burning off the impurities. It's strengthening what's weak. It's proving what's real. So when you feel frustrated that your season of preparation is taking too long, remember this: God is more interested in who you're becoming than what you're achieving. Because who you become determines the sustainability of what you achieve. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in practical terms. Imagine a farmer who plants a seed. That farmer doesn't dig up the seed every day to check if it's growing. Why? Because he understands the process. He knows there's something happening beneath the surface that his eyes cannot see. The roots are spreading. The foundation is being established. And only when that underground work is complete does the visible growth begin to manifest. Your life follows the same principle. What you're experiencing right now, this waiting, this testing, this season where nothing seems to be happening, this is your root system being established. And I'm telling you, the deeper the roots, the taller the tree, the stronger the foundation, the higher the building. You see, most people want the crown without the character. They want the platform without the preparation. They want the influence without the integrity. But God doesn't work that way. He will never give you something externally that you haven't developed internally, because He knows that what you get before you're ready, you'll lose after you receive it. This is why so many people self-destruct when they get their breakthrough. They prayed for it, fasted for it, believed for it, and when it finally came, they weren't ready. Not because God made a mistake, but because they rushed the process. They wanted the harvest, but wouldn't endure the planting season. So here's what I need you to understand today. Stop measuring your progress by what you can see. Stop comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. Your assignment is unique, and so is your preparation. The very things that frustrate you right now, the closed doors, the delayed responses, the prayers that seem unanswered, these are not obstacles to your destiny. They are the pathway to it. Every no is protecting you from a yes you're not ready for. Every delay is giving you time to develop what you'll need when the door finally opens. Every test is extracting from you the weakness that would sabotage your success. This is the proof of God's love.